You must have seen the reports about mass graves containing hundreds of bodies around Al Shifa. UN chief said he was horrified by these reports. I'm wondering if US has a comment on this and whether you guys have raised this with the Israeli government.
We have seen those reports, and the reports are incredibly troubling, and we're inquiring on this with the government of Israel. I'm just not going to get ahead of this process. I am not going to get ahead of the process, and I am sure we'll have more to say in the time forthcoming. We continue to look closely at the report and are assessing how we can continue to work with partners in the region, host authorities, and the government of Israel to implement some of these recommendations. I'm not going to speak to the specifics, but it should be no surprise to you that we engage with the government of Israel at all levels, often many times, multiple times a day, at all hours.
Obviously, there's been lots of anticipation about the Leahy Law decisions that are expected. There's been reporting that there were recommendations for some IDF units to be identified as in violation of the Leahy amendments, but that the secretary opted not to take staff's recommendation for several of the units. Can you comment on that?
So I think I'm going to echo what you saw Matt and the secretary address as it relates to this question beginning in Capri on Friday, which is I'm just not going to get ahead of this process. What I will say is that we take the Leahy Law incredibly seriously. It is also the standards of it we apply consistently across the board with all countries in which we have security relationships with. That should be no surprise to anybody, but I am not going to get ahead of the process, and I am sure we'll have more to say in the time forthcoming. Humaira?
Yesterday, I think Matt said on UNRWA, you guys haven't had a chance to review it. You were still reviewing it. Do you have like an assessment on the Colonna report's findings?
So, as it relates to the report that former French Foreign Minister Colonna took the lead on, we first take a step back. We welcome and strongly support the recommendations of the independent review of UNRWA mechanisms and procedures related to neutrality. This was released yesterday. We continue to look closely at the report and are assessing how we can continue to work with partners in the region, host authorities, and the government of Israel to implement some of these recommendations. We, of course, continue to support UNRWA's important work. It must continue. But at the same time, we continue to advocate for reforms, and we welcome what the former French foreign minister laid out.
So given the language, the language in the supplemental that's about to pass and how it prohibits the resumption of U.S. funding, is it fair to say until at least like 2025 there is no chance that U.S. would be able to resume funding for UNRWA?
You've heard me say this before. As we assume this supplemental passes, when it passes the Senate, we will be an administration that complies with the law, and the law is very clearly laid out in the national security supplemental as it relates to what kind of relationship the United States can have with UNRWA. We're continuing to engage with partners in the region, with UN agencies and other humanitarian organizations about the important work when it comes to humanitarian aid. It's also really important to note that there is a significant amount of monies for humanitarian aid in the supplemental, including humanitarian aid into Gaza, and so we'll continue to pursue those lines of effort.
And the report also found that Israel was yet to present any evidence for the accusation that hundreds of UNRWA staff were members of terrorist groups. Is the U.S. going to be encouraging Israel to provide that evidence? Are you going to do anything towards that end?
So our understanding is that the United Nations is continuing to pursue an investigation as it relates to that relates to the individuals alleged to have participated in the October 7th terrorist attacks, and so I will not going to get ahead of that process.
Okay. And the final thing is, you must have seen the reports about mass graves containing hundreds of bodies around Al Shifa. UN chief said he was horrified by these reports. I'm wondering if U.S. has a comment on this and whether you guys have raised this with the Israeli government.
We have seen those reports, and the reports are incredibly troubling, and we're inquiring on this with the government of Israel.
Specifically on that?
Correct. I don't have any specific information to offer, insight into what this is or isn't. I don't have a sense of that from up here, but we are inquiring about this with the government of Israel.
Do you know who you reached out to who? Is it
I'm not going to speak to the specifics, but it should be no surprise to you that we engage with the government of Israel at all levels, often many times, multiple times a day, at all hours. Go ahead, Saeed.
Thank you. Going back to Humaira's question, just to follow up on that. Now, it seems that more than 300 bodies have been found. The United Nations is asking or calling for an independent investigation. Would you support such an independent investigation?
Right now, Saeed, we are asking for more information.
Right.
That is squarely where we're leaving the conversation. Right. I don't have any details to match, confirm, or offer as it relates to that. We're aware of those reports, and we have asked the government of Israel for additional clarity and information, and that's where I'm at.
I understand. If Secretary General Guterres asked for your support in this effort, would the United States support him?
You're asking about a hypothetical, Saeed, which again I'm not going to get ahead of until we have greater fidelity on information as to what this is, and we're hoping to get that from the government of Israel as soon as possible. Alex, on the region or something else? Let me stay a little bit on the region. I'll come back to you. Michelle, you had your hand up.
On Iran. Al Jarida newspaper, a Kuwaiti newspaper, has quoted a high-level source in the Iranian Supreme National Security Council saying that Tehran received an American letter offering to resume negotiations to resume the nuclear agreement after reaching security understandings. And the source added that the offer includes promises to cancel a large portion of economic and non-economic sanctions if Tehran cooperates in restricting its atomic activity and regional pacification. Can you confirm this?
So, report? Michelle, I'm not going to comment on our ways of communicating with Iran, except to say we are not in direct talks with Iran on the JCPOA, either in New York or anywhere else.
Indirect talks.
What's that?
Are you in direct talks with Iran?
I just said that we are not in direct talks with Iran.
Indirect, not direct.
I'm not going to speak to any of our communicating ways of communicating with Iran. In the back, go ahead.
So on the reforms, today the new Palestinian Prime Minister announced a new package of reforms designed to strengthen the Palestinian Authority, and it seems like largely these reforms were the same as promised by the previous prime minister. Has the United States, has the State Department been in touch with the Palestinian Authority and about these reforms that were announced?
We have conversations with appropriate members of the PA regularly. I don't have any conversations to read out, but broadly, reform is something that we have stressed and made clear to them as part of the broader conversations we continue to have for peace and stability in the region. But I'm happy to check if we have had any more specific engagements on this news.
Are you familiar with the?
I've seen the reports. I've not. I think it broke right before I came out, so I haven't had an opportunity to look into it. But we're happy to check with the team.